Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happening in their own individual business, in their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. Okay, let's meet the panel today. We've got Daniel O'Neill. He's a co-founder of ProCook. The company has 65 stores, 800 staff with a turnover of nearly £70 million. Last year, Daniel stepped down from the day-to-day running of the business. However, we'll find out what's really how important is the Christmas trading period for the business? What's the latest kitchen trends? And how are his range of small electrical products doing? And also, what's he up to next? And I think he's in France at the moment, aren't you, Daniel?
I am indeed.
Okay, you don't have to rub it in. All right, we've got Martin Surl. He's the ex-Gloucestershire pioneering police and crime commissioner. He's an ex-police officer who was the first incumbent of the role as an independent from 2012 to 2021. However, he lost his job to the Conservative Chris Nelson. He stood again in this year's May election as a Liberal Democrat candidate, missing out by only around 700 votes, wasn't it? Something like that, Martin. So we'll find out, in his opinion, Gloucestershire Police Force is struggling financially really badly. What's his thoughts on that? And on a lighter note, what's he up to next? We have Talitha Nelson. She's the CEO of Gloucestershire Community Foundation Trust. They delivered over £3.5 million last year and helping to reach 380,000 people. There's a cost of living crisis out there. We all know that charities are under the cosh. So we'll find out, Talitha, how bad it's going and what they're going to do about it and how you can help as well. And finally, last not least, we've got Sam Holliday, the business development manager for the Federation of Small Business, ex-editor of the Bath Chronicle. We'll see. Well, we all know what the impact of the Chancellor's budget raid on business with national insurance going up, thresholds of people starting to pay going down, and the increase in the minimum wage. So there is, a firestorm coming down the tracks, and obviously cold weather and the increase of energy bills as well. So it's looking pretty tight. So we'll find out what's Sam's opinion, what's the feeling out there for the business community. Okay, let's have a quick glance at the papers. Thankfully, thanks to the BBC. The Guardian, ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu over Gaza. The Times, Israel leader faces arrest if he flies into Britain. The Financial Times, Hague Court issues arrest warrant for Netanyahu over war crimes in Gaza. The Daily Telegraph, Starmer supports arrest of Netanyahu. The Mirror, you are at war. That's Putin's obviously threat to the UK and America and Europe. The Eye, UK and France will stand firm against Putin, vows Lamy. The Metro, Brit lawyer dies from methanol in drink. The Daily Mail, Ed Miliband slap green tax on your boiler. The Daily Express, Labour hands over cash to foreign farmers. The Sun, dodgy haircut is a hate crime. And finally, last not least, the Daily Star, rage of the dirty Bertie. And I think that's a weather storm, not my next door neighbour. Okay, let's start with you, Sam. What have you picked out for us today, please?
Well, obviously, if you look at all those papers, there's a lot of pretty terrifying international geopolitics going on there, which we probably don't really want to dwell on too much. But I want to come back to British politics, actually. And yesterday, the death of John Prescott, which is well covered in all the papers. And I think there's an analogy with business with John Prescott, because we kind of forget now, because it seems such a long time ago, but the New Labour revolution was pretty sensational, and it did work for quite a long time. And I think it worked mainly because he had Tony Blair at the top of it. He was young, he was energetic, he brought something new to politics, I think, and everyone warmed to that. But before he had a chance to change the country, he first had to change the party. And the party was very traditional. There's a lot of very working class people with union backgrounds. They were a bit suspicious of Blair and what he wanted to bring. So John Prescott coming in as his number two was the perfect person to help that and take that through. And I think the business analogy for us all there is that we like to surround ourselves with people who look like us, talk like us, have the same kind of background, but that isn't always the best person to take a business excuse me, I've got a cold, to take a business forward. By having John Prescott as the ultimate critical friend, it meant that New Labour really worked. So I think as a business people, we can all think that we all want to surround ourselves with people like us, but sometimes you need someone who isn't like us to challenge us to make things success. So I think his story is a fascinating one in many ways. He reached a peak that many people didn't think he'd reach, but he did it by being loyal to somebody, but still being a critical friend. We all in business need critical friends, and I think John Prescott is a classic political example.
And also a classic case of someone who had dyslexia and rose to the ranks and became, second highest possible person in the country.
He achieved an awful lot, and I think, do you know what? When I talk about people like Blair and Prescott, and you can think of Thatcher, Heseltine, it makes you realise there's not many political heavyweights around anymore. These are big figures that had a big impact. But I look now, who are the political heavyweights of the 2024?
I totally agree. And when you look into the troubles of the world and Trump coming down the road, let alone what's happening in Russia, you really wish for those bygone days of people who knew what they're talking about in some ways. I'll come over to Martin. Thanks for great to see you again, Martin.
Thank you.
What have you picked out from the papers? Thanks, Sam.
It's a story from the Times, which I thought was quite distressing, really, and maybe quite hopeful. It's about a poll, and the educational system we have in this country. It shows that 2/3 of the population think that the educational curriculum does not prepare our young people well for life or for work, for their mental health, etc., etc. What it is encouraging, though, is that it's a cross-party view now that things have to change. And I think that's hugely important because, much as I have a huge lot of respect for our people who educate us, I think things do need to change to prepare people for the modern life. Kind of links to another story in the Times yesterday about the educational system in Estonia, where I worked for a long time advising them on justice and home affairs, and how they now teach their youngsters robotics at the age of 7 and 8, preparing them for what the world is and what they think the world will be. And I think it's hugely important because without our young people, there's no future for this country. I hope they listen to industry, hope they listen to policing, hope they listen to parents, and just understand how hard it is for young people these days. And what we must do as the older generation, the government of the day, is prepare them for life. So it's a really good story. There's a lot of detail in there in what they're going to do. Hope it doesn't become politicized. But it could be just really great for industry, great for our mental health, and just great for our country in these hugely troubled times. And that's my main story today.
Okay, thanks very much, Martin. Daniel, great to see you again there in France. What have you picked out from us, please?
The story that I picked out really was sort of retail sales. And again, we saw them drop in October by almost 1%, 0.7%. And also online sales dropping as well. So clearly unsettled times, I think probably with the apprehension of the budget. But it sort of emphasizes the point to me that retail, it employs about 10.7% of the population in the UK and accounts for just 4.9%. It's very difficult to be a retailer in the UK. And if we look at the sort of headwinds against retail, inflation has gone up around 2%, as we agree. And as much, I'm very much for, as you know, paying people a fair day. I was very early adopter of living wage foundation. But for your average retailer now, if 21-year-olds and over, their wages have gone up 6.7%. And if you're 18 to 20-year-olds, they've gone up 16.3%, which is all great. But that is a heavy burden. On top of that, you've got an 8.7% increase, obviously, in the employer's national insurance. It just appears that every year, more and more and more is just relied upon retail. We've reduced the rates relief from 75 to 40%. Again, in this coming year, with rates going up another 1.6%. So that multiplier of the sort of the rates you pay on a retail unit has gone from 34p, in theory, the average of the rent you pay. Obviously, rents have gone up with inflation, if not more. But you now pay 55.5 pence for the rates on that building. So it's a double whammy. The rents go up, but the rates are going up on top. And I just wonder, every government says we're going to have a rates reform, but when are we actually going to do it? It is just ridiculous. How long? I mean, we've just seen Ann Summers. This is one of your stories, obviously. Sales growing nicely from 101 to 104 million, but they made a loss of 3.9.
Yeah.
It's no surprise. It's no surprise.
Well, let's carry on with this theme, actually. I know we'll come back to you, Talitha, the stories that you picked up, but let's talk about the national insurance and all these price hikes, because let's be honest, Talitha, we were talking the other day, and the cost to charities coming down the tracks is absolutely enormous, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to people, some of them are going to go bust.
I mean, that's the thing with charities, they're treated as a business. And I completely, having been in retail myself, developing brands nationally and globally, the restraints and the constant pressures, but actually charities are trying to hold back the tidal wave on our statutory services. And without charities, your lives would all change. And if they close down, we would all end up in a much worse place. So charities are now treated as businesses. And with the NI insurance and all the other bits and pieces going on, they're struggling to keep the lights on. They're struggling to serve the massive increase of beneficiaries knocking at their doors. Unfortunately, that's the business I'm in. But, to be treated as a business when they're not being treated as the NHS and all the other, services out there for humans and people and us, I have to say is absolutely crippling for our sector.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly over to Sam, because obviously we're going to talk to, in a wider, broad sense on the national insurance contributions as well. What are you hearing on the streets and, for the business community for this?
Well, I think Daniel and Talitha have explained it extremely well. I mean, I think I have to start by saying, and I think it's important to do so, that the employment allowance was doubled, and that meant that for a lot of smaller businesses, they won't be affected by the NI increases. And I think it's important to say that, because I think everybody thinks it's coming, but I think for 1 million of the smaller businesses, they won't get an increase. However, over and beyond that, it does look pretty savage. And I think the problem is that a lot of businesses are prepared to give the government, not every business is very political, but they'll give the government the benefit of the doubt. But there wasn't much confidence about before the budget. There was a lot of nervousness about the budget, which I haven't really experienced before, I have to say. People really nervous about a budget. I thought, this is really weird. And since then, there's been nothing that has calmed people down. And I think Daniel's absolutely spot on. I have yet to meet an employer that doesn't want to pay their staff more and go over and beyond. But when your income's going down, what do you do? And what will happen is that people will start losing staff, or they'll have recruitment freezes. There's a story in the Times today that youth unemployment's at its highest for 10 years, people who are NEETs. And suddenly we can see all these things happening again. And I think the government has got off to a bad start with business. And I think it needs to sort of prove that it's a pro-business government, which is what they said in opposition are going to be. But so far, we've not seen much evidence of it. And that is affecting everybody's confidence.
I'm going to bring you back in, Daniel. How much is it going to cost your business? You must have done the maths by now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of money, isn't it? It's around. So the actual living wage foundation has gone up about 5%, and obviously that applies to anyone who is working, basically 18 and above. Where actually the national living wage has got this tiered, where for some reason the government is the only company that's allowed to discriminate, where you can pay someone a different age a different wage. So yeah, that's a slight irony for me.
For ProCook though, have you worked out how much extra this is going to cost you guys? 800 staff.
I haven't. I don't know. I haven't worked out the number. It's 7% though, isn't it? It's around 7% of our of the wages in store. And wages in store are, they're around 20% of what. So yeah, I mean it's 1.5%, straight off the bottom line in terms of contribution from those stores.
I got to go over to you, Martin. Let's bring you in, obviously, as Police and Crime Commission when you were there. I mean, the cost of all this sort of stuff going on as well is quite horrendous, isn't it?
It is. I think the police force in a fairly strong position because they're not affected by the national insurance. I think the government announced that they would pay that or increase their grant to cover that. But of course, the whole state of society is relevant to the police. And when people are struggling, the police struggle too. So I think the police have a very important role to play on that. They've got their own financial problems, which are different to the industry's one, but we can't work without industry. They are the people who pay the taxes. The police don't pay the taxes. And we need to support them, particularly retail, because it's the heart of our cities and online as well. I think online need to pay more, perhaps. The rates are absolutely Greek. Our town centres, they seem to be dying to a degree. I had a walk around our cities and towns, and some of them are really struggling. It's a bad look. It doesn't make us feel good. And as a retired person now, I want to feel good. Okay,
thanks so much. Talitha, I'm going to bring you in and let's talk about the charity sector. We'll kind of miss out the newspapers now, that's okay. Time is moving nicely along. Talitha, you and I talk a lot about the pressures that are going on in the charitable sector at this particular moment. Could you just explain what your foundation is doing, please?
So we set up what's called the Poverty Hurts Appeal. It's sprung out of surviving winter. Now we have in our county probably one of the highest excess winter deaths amongst older people around wintertime in the country. Around 400, the latest stats, die because of winter, whether they're choosing between eating and heating. So we always raise some money over the winter period, but actually where the cost of living crisis came out of that, and it was a crisis, but out of COVID, it was very much a half of haves and have-nots, and those really struggling with the cost of living crisis. So we set up Poverty Hurts because actually we're seeing all year round poverty. We now have, and it's really alarming, and most people won't know when I speak to them in Gloucestershire, we have 25% of our children in this county living in poverty, and it raises to 30% in Gloucester and 31% in the Forest of Dean. Now, I'm embarrassed. I live in a county, a wealthy county, where the children in this county, a quarter of them are living in poverty. It's a scandal. And so, how are we going to mobilise and get behind giving children opportunity? And the trouble with poverty is it rises crime. As you know, Martin, when people are desperate, crime rises. So if we don't stem the flow and look at some of the things that we can do to help lift people out of poverty. Now, ordinary people, 2 working parent families are now queuing at food banks. This is what happens when you've got 2 spaniels. We just launched the Poverty Hurts Appeal, and when we've done our recent interviews with various charities around the county, the Gloucester Food Bank were talking about the people who are now queuing. Sadly, it's NHS workers. Sadly, it's charity workers. So it's ordinary people on full-time wages that can no longer feed themselves and their families.
All right, Talitha, thanks.
It's an interesting point, isn't it? Because is that just the cost of food going up? Because clearly, if you look at those entry-level wages in national minimum wage jobs, if you look at the sort of the rate of inflation for that sector of our country, they've way exceeded the sort of the cost of living.
Well, if you're looking at the starting of a 25 grand or less role, you've got to earn as a family £45,000 a year now to actually make ends meet. It's an enormous amount of money. And if you earn less than that, you can't pay your bills. That's the reality. So I think, with the price rises, wages just haven't met that at low level, whether it's food, fuel, bills, mortgages. Most people don't own their own homes when they're queuing at food banks. But I think the stats now are so alarming. To earn £45,000 as a family before you can meet your bills. I remember as a manager earning 15 grand a year and being able to pay my bills 25 years ago. So this is ordinary people now. This isn't just the perception of people that aren't working or employed. This is ordinary people, 2-parent working families that can't feed their children. That is a crisis.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Tifa. I'm going to go over to another crisis, actually. It's a bit downer today. Hopefully we'll cheer ourselves up with Daniel with some Christmas products. But Martin, let's go over to you, because Martin, look, you were a police and crime commissioner. We all know the force itself is in a lot of trouble, isn't it? That, you know, financially is in a right old quagmire. We won't even get into the police, the chief of police, anyway, where he is at the moment.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the police have got problems quite clearly financially. I think it is different to business in this county, and I'm only going to talk about Gloucestershire. That's my area of expertise. I think their current financial problems are they're serious. I think they were predictable. In fact, so if you go back to our interviews, 2021, I was saying this is what was going to happen, and I think to a degree they are avoidable, were avoidable. But, you know, the police, like any other business, has to make ends meet. We've heard there's money short in industry, there's pressures on the charitable sector, and the police are no different, and they can't really expect special treatment. You've got to make, I'm not going to criticise the police. I think the officers and staff do a cracking job, best of their ability, most of the time, and most of them. This is about the structure, the infrastructure goes behind it, the finances. And the finances are the job of the Police and Crime Commission. That's why I can speak of it. Now, we've had cuts before. 32 million came out of policing in between 2010 and 2017. And during that time, we took some flab out of the business or the organisation. It was dreadful. It was very dangerous. But we started to rebuild. But there was never this illusion that big money was coming back into policing. And I think some people thought it was. I think not exclusively. The problems the force has now, it's recruited massively in police staff over the last 3 years. That was my successor's pledge. And I wish him well. This is not personal. I wish him well, but he was promising to massively increase the size of the force. And I was saying the revenue streams just are not there to pay for it. And they've been running on reserves for quite a long time. And now they can't afford to keep them because, you know, there was never, in my view, this bailout wasn't going to come from government because we've heard how industry is struggling, the military is struggling. So that's where they are now. I think they'll work their way through it. It's a great shame, I think, that some people have been recruited and now they're paying people £10,000 to volunteer for redundancy. But they will pull through. They always do because they don't have the legal option to go bankrupt and call in the receivers. But it is having an effect now. And I think we need to watch very carefully what kind of organisation they become. I was distressed to hear that one of the first things they did is pull the funding for the treasure seekers to have their Christmas party at Waterwells. Now, with a balanced organisation, and I know under the former chief, or not former chief, the current chief who is currently away from work, that wouldn't have happened. So we wish them well. It's difficult times, but what I said in my unsuccessful election campaign to the chief and to the OPCC is there's no more money. Just present me a force, an organisation, a service that can do the job. You know, it won't be able to do everything, but just present me an efficient organisation, and we understand the money isn't going to be there, and it isn't there.
No, and well, I've just put in context. Actually, I think it's 150 staff they're trying to make redundant. They're offering them £10,000 to make them redundant. Considering a couple of years ago they recruited, and if they can't make them redundant, then they're looking at already stopped recruiting new PCSOs. So that means obviously natural wastage will come and they won't be replaced, which is a real worry. That's
exactly. You can't make police officers redundant. You cannot, and that's probably why Chief Constable Hanson insisted to the new commissioner that they had to recruit police staff to hit his targets, because once you've got police officers, you are stuck with them, because it's a good thing if you can pay them. But now they're going to go, which is tragic, because it won't be the new ones will go. It'll be the people who probably it's financially viable to retire. Their pension will allow them to kick in. They've got other skills where they can go on. But, you know, I do wish them well. I do wish him well. But if you haven't got a revenue source to actually pay for the officers and the staff are crucial. You should never have recruited them. And, you know, I am a supporter of the Chief Constable who is currently suspended. It's not a secret to anybody. He was a very stabilising force. And I hope this goes away. I don't know the full details, but perhaps the commissioner overreacted.
Okay, right. Thanks ever so much for that, Martin. I'm going to go over to you, Sam, just very briefly, if that's okay with you. Obviously, we've been rocking up to a lot of these meetings and things. The overall general feeling at the moment in the business community? You know, you meet an awful lot of people like I do. What's your gut feeling, or what are people telling you now about the
Well,
economy and the way things are
yeah,
going?
hearing what Daniel said was quite important. I think retail needs a good Christmas. I mean, it's very simple as that. The next 4 or 5 weeks are always important for retail, but it's never probably been as important. And I think generally, Mark, there's still incredible nervousness out there. I can't believe we're going into another year with people saying maybe next year will be better, because I've been hearing that since COVID, frankly. I just don't see any great rush of confidence at the moment, and I don't know what it's going to take to break that cycle. But at the moment, it just feels like everyone's waiting for something good to happen. So I don't know. I want to be more positive, because you and I are both very positive people about business. But every time I meet a business person, they start telling me their problems within about 2 minutes. So I just hope 2025 is better than it appears it looks at the moment.
I've just got to add, you say retail's tough, right? Hospitality is extremely tough.
Oh, very
The
much so.
the care sector is extremely tough. It's every single way you look, and the manufacturing is extremely tough. It's right across the board, and a lot of it has been done by this government. That's the way that I
Well,
see
both
it.
governments, not just this government. You've got
Well,
to be
of
you've got
course.
to be balanced. Really, it's been pretty crap for 14 years now, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
one
know.
more year
Okay.
is not going to change that.
No, that's very true. Thanks so much, Martin. But I'm also saying just what they created with the national insurance contributions and things, and
It's a
that's
perception, Mark,
I
as
think
much as
it's
anything else. It's a perception, I think, because as I say, a lot of smaller businesses won't be affected, but they still believe that this government has not shown much pro-business support. Simple as
okay.
that.
After the
Thanks.
last budget, we had a cost of living crash and crisis. So I don't think any of them make sense. And that had a massive impact on our sector after Liz Truss, unfortunately, and the unfortunate budget. So we've been there, done that, and it just keeps going. I don't think, let's hope for a more positive 2025.
What are you about Donald Trump coming down the tracks in 2025, and the war in Ukraine is still rattling through, and then we got a war in Israel and Lebanon. I mean, it's
And like
anyway.
said to me,
Let's talk about jingle bells. Let's talk about jingle bells. Daniel, come on. Let's give us some Christmas cheer here.
Just before we go Christmas cheer, I'll go one more, because I think it is. We're all hoping for a fantastic retail Christmas, and hopefully we will get it. We had our first bout of snow. Footfall in retail was down 25% on Monday and Tuesday.
Wow.
We've got Storm Bert coming this weekend. We've got 5 or 6, weekends pre-Christmas. This one's going to be written off. It's
How much does that kind of cost you then, Daniel? Or that kind of thing when you just wipe it out like that? Must be
well,
millions.
we probably of that 25% drop in footfall, you get so your conversion goes up slightly because you get a more dedicated shopper, as it were. So, but we probably lost half the money, half of that in terms of revenue on Monday and Tuesday. So this Storm Bert is looking like it's going to be a cracker, isn't it? I mean, I fear for retail footfall on Saturday and Sunday. I really do.
But it's not just retail football. It's the
No.
hospitality.
Hospitality, yeah, probably even more so. I mean, you've got to buy Aunt Maud her Christmas present, have you? You haven't got to go out for a drink. So, as you say, hospitality is very discretionary.
And at least you can sit there, you're not being funny, and people can buy your products online. How much?
Yeah.
So what's the split between online and
Two-thirds.
which way around? So
Retail is still highest. Yeah.
is it really?
Yeah. In terms of kitchenwares, still over 70% is bought. People like to touch and feel what we sell, so it's still quite heavily retail orientated.
And what is your best sort of
nice news then? Nice news.
But what's your best selling product then? What's new and trendy then, Daniel? What's coming down the tracks?
Well, I mean, electrical, as you know, has been a pretty good launch for us, and we've got some great gifts in terms of a chocolate maker, a sort of a hot milk chocolate maker. That's going great guns, and we brought in a couple of special colours on our food mixer. So at the other end of the scale price point, but they're going really well. So that's great to see. And we're still very committed to retail. So we open up in Merry Hill today. and we open up in Guildford next week, which gets us to 65. And then we've got 3 more opening just after peak. So yeah, one of them is down in Cabot Circus. So that, you know, it's good. We work very hard, and we're very fortunate that, you know, we are, I would say, probably, you know, one of the better retailers out there. But there are better retailers like, you know, Ann Summers was a brilliant business, and that's struggling. I mean, you know, it's affecting all retail.
Well,
you know, it's a little bit depressing in some ways. I think we need hope in this country. Going back to what Sam said, where are the statesmen of any colour? You know, I can go back to my youth. I remember the Hessel times, whether I liked them or not. I did not quite like him. You know, whether we need these people who gave us leadership through troubled times. We don't seem to have them, and I hope they will emerge from whatever party, organisation, or industry to give us that hope. Because without a feel-good factor, you know, life isn't much fun, obviously. So I think that is crucial to do that. And, you know, retail, I think, are essential to that. The vibrancy of our towns and city centres is vital to that. And we have to get that back. It's not just the UK is in this kind of doom loop. But at the moment, I don't see the person or the organisation who's going to take us out of that. So we'll just have to keep doing our bit.
I would like to say, you know, and Sam and I were out and about yesterday a lot. There was a good vibe out there, you know, in the business community. There is a great willing to work together and collaborate and network. And, you know, Gloucestershire itself is a fantastic county that covers such a broad business section, isn't it? That's the beauty of it, really. And also, there aren't many other counties that are so well connected, and I think that's because we have the growth hubs. We did have G First LEP, and we can be very fortunate for that. So I'm trying to stay on a positive there, Martin, and right so as well.
Exactly.
Let's go to the punchline then, because Punchline is a very positive publication. So who shall I start with this time? I'll start with you, Daniel.
Okay, well, I picked up your story on Ann Summers, which obviously Angela passing away and her sister now taking over. I do hope, you know, it carries on the success it was. I really do hope so.
Okay, and I'm sure you look nice in a red basque, mate.
Yeah.
Talitha, black?
Be really positive, because my job is all about inspiring giving back, and giving back cheers people up, and giving back isn't just about money. Can we be kind? Can we give something back? A skill, some fun. Jeff Goldblum played the piano at a London railway station yesterday and cheered so many people up, and he'd done it once before. And I just think, do you know what, like you say, Gloucestershire, and why we're so passionate about Gloucestershire is we have amazing people here, amazing businesses, an amazing charitable sector. We've got 2,500 charities, if not 4,000 with community. Wow. It's a wonderful, wonderful county. And so I think...
What have you picked out from Punchline, Talitha?
You know, it's slightly doom and gloom, but essentially what we're encouraging is if people can afford to donate to Poverty Hurts. We've just seen energy bills are going to rise from January. The winter fuel allowance is now stopped, which is going to affect an awful lot of people in this county. And so the Punchline article that I'm going to talk about, Mark, is you have done a lovely article for us, a brilliant article on our Poverty Hurts appeal. And that's the one that I'm going to pick out. So we're raising 100,000. If anyone can help, corporate events, raising money, donate. When you're raising small amounts of money like 100,000, it can really go an awful long way. We supported 40 warm hubs, we supported 7,000 meals, we supported 30,000 people. So really it's inspiring people, whatever they can donate, 10, 20. We've just had a donation of 5,000 from a very generous business. So please just get behind fighting poverty in our own county, on our own doorsteps, and do the little bit we can to make this a better Christmas for everybody.
And you can see why Talitha is chief executive of this particular organiser. I couldn't get a bloody word edgeways there. Thank you, Talitha. Martin, what's the story?
Well, I'm going to give you a plug, Mark, because Punchline do a cracking job. We've known each other since 2012, 11, and we've seen the mainstream media really fall apart in the county. We had great editors like Ian Mead and others when the editors were really going great guns, and they're not anymore. Great respect to them. So well done for keeping this going. Your website works, which is quite nice compared to some of the media around here. But that's really good. But the article I thought was really useful and helpful was £8 million going into transport, buses and transport in the county. Now, I don't know how that's going to be spent. That's for others. But I hope it will be spent wisely. Because if we can't get to our city centres and our town centres and our villages and even our estates, they'll die. So I hope that people will see the value of public transport. It will go up in people's sort of view, because all the Londoners use public transport. I haven't used it for years until quite recently. So I hope they link it to town centre parking, accessibility. Because going back to retail, which is a bit of a theme today, when my daughter was young, she was working in retail in town centre, just to get there, that was the first 2 or 3 hours of a day of pay gone, trying to spend a day parking in Cheltenham or Gloucester. So I hope we will look after our young people, the people who work in retail, to make our city centres and town centres vibrant again for living, for retail, for fun. And that's why I hope transport's crucial to that. And I don't know, I don't use it a lot, but
well, you do now.
Hope. Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for that, Martin. Have you just got your bus pass?
I went a couple of years ago. I must admit that now, but it was quite an experience. I haven't used the bus in Gloucestershire for ages. I couldn't work it out. Just trying to get the upload of photographs to the bus pass took me ages. So perhaps I needed it.
Thanks, Martin. Sam, what have you picked out for us?
Yeah, well, we want to stay positive, and it comes back to what you started with, really. Yesterday, the opening of the Cheltenham Growth Hub. I think maybe anybody watching this that doesn't still know, Gloucestershire's got the best growth hubs of anywhere in the country. Most people have got these things called growth hubs, which is just a phone line. In Gloucester, there are 6 places now you can go, talk about your business, talk about entrepreneurship, meet other people and connect. And it is one of the absolute jewels in Gloucestershire's crown, the Growth Hub. And it was brilliant to go to Cheltenham yesterday, see such enthusiasm amongst young businesses. I loved it, and I loved your coverage as well, Mark. So that's a definite plus for me.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. My story, the pig and the punchlines, is actually about another coffee drive-through coming into the city, which I think makes it the 50th. I've actually lost count of how many drive-throughs we're having in Gloucester. There seems to be a sort of saturation point, especially of Costas as well. But hey-ho, the market dictates what it does. Obviously people love a cup of coffee and drive through as well. Anyway, that's my pick of the punchline. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to thank all of you.
Did you see we've got a new resident coming, though?
A new resident?
Yeah, to Gloucestershire. Ellen DeGeneres is escaping the US to come to the conference because of Trump.
Yeah.
I don't even know who he is.
She.
There we go. Unfortunately, I'll start again. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I just want to thank our fantastic panel. Thank you guys for getting up super duper early and getting the papers and all the rest of it. I'd like to thank my wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's accountants, advisors, and tax advisors and business advisors, but everything else they do. And also a big thank to all of you that watched the show. That's all we've got time for this week. We'll be back again next week. But remember, it's all in the punchline. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.